With all the success you've had, do you still face, are you currently facing any fears, or are there fears about the horizon?
Man, I have to give you amazing props. You're such a curious person about the people that you talk to. I love it. I love it, man.
Thank you.
The answer is, thank you. Are you kidding me? I've been on a ton of podcasts and people just same questions.
Welcome to the Idea Climbing Radio Show. Today we're talking about bridging the generation gap to share your next big idea. And my guest is Scott Schilling. Super happy to have him here. He's achieved the pinnacle of success within speaking, training, and business coaching industries, having achieved the top platforms worldwide, sharing the stage with the likes of Suze Orman, Stephen Forbes, General Colin Powell, Les Brown, Tom Hopkins. One of the first sales books I ever read was Tom Hopkins, and many more. He's delivered over 3,000 speeches in his career and has spoken in front of crowds of tens of thousands of people at a single time, totaling close to 1 million attendees over his career. And finally, he has personally accounted for millions of dollars in business while helping clients grow their business, closing hundreds of millions. He's helped countless numbers of people find success within their financial lives, businesses, organizations, and passions. And here's the key, while they're having a ton of fun doing it. Thank you for making the time to be here, Scott. I appreciate it.
I'm honored to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
And we're going to talk about strategies to bridge generational gaps. But first, when it comes to bridging those gaps, sharing your ideas with different generations, why is it so important to you? What's the story there?
Well, it's important for a number of reasons, because quite frankly, the younger generations are our future. They're the future of the country, and they're also the future of our world, quite frankly. And as you start to understand and you live a little bit, you get a little more mature. That's code word for older. You start to find out that there are differences, and at one time people said, gosh, am I starting to sound like my parents? Well, you probably are a little bit, but it's because they experienced different things than you had up until that time. Well, now because you're a little bit older, you've experienced those things. Mm-hmm. And there's been a number of different things that have caused generational gaps and just gaps in our world right now, if we haven't noticed. And that's unfortunate. But the good news is recognizing it is the first step to bridging those gaps and pulling things back together. So that's why it's so exciting. Either we take the action. I want to be known for solving problems, not creating them.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think causes, where does it begin? What do you think causes these generational gaps?
Well, I think there's just some natural ones. There always have been over time, because of innovation and technology and things like that. But up until my era as a boomer, those things happened slower than they do today. Technology and knowledge and availability of such is so fast that it's crazy. And then the other side of it is really with the advent of the internet, we as a country started teaching differently. My generation as boomers are really the last full generation to learn via rote memory. And that is simply, you'd look at 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, and you would learn them in order, and you would take that knowledge and you'd hold it up here, right? You would put it into your noggin and you would carry it along with you. Well, with the advent of the internet, they kind of stopped teaching rote memory and just started teaching where to find knowledge. And so that made a dramatic difference. Now it was teaching Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and younger where to find it. So that might be in a handheld phone, a tablet, a computer, something like that. Now, on one side, that's great because they have a whole lot more access to a whole lot more information. On the other side, one could suggest that not every piece of knowledge is true that's available on those devices. The battery can run out, or the device might not be in your hand. So if any of those things happen, all of a sudden critical knowledge isn't available to you. So it's a combination of a lot of different things, but I think that when you understand this, it's the first step to bridging those gaps.
What comes after that? As far as if that's the first step, then what's next? Is it getting their attention? Is it keeping it? What comes after that?
Well, I think the first thing you do, it's like anything, you have to admit that there's a gap, right? You have to understand that there's a gap. Then you have to look at what might have caused that gap, and then what would be a great solution to that. And so as I've been working on this topic and this subject for years, creating connection, creating relationships with people. The one thing that'll never go away is that we are human beings. We are supposed to have human experiences. We are social beings. We're supposed to interact. Well, unfortunately, there have been things that have happened over the last number of years that kind of encourage people not to be social. Well, really crazy because we're social beings. And so all of these things come into play. The first thing you have to do is identify it. And then, like I said, as I've been doing a lot of study on this and a lot of work on this topic and working to help other people create relationships for the benefit of all, what you find out is that the boomers and the greatest generation, the older generation than mine, have knowledge, they have wisdom, they have experience. They've learned it from the school of hard knocks, right? They've lived it. They've got the bumps and bruises. And then when you look at the younger X's and the millennials and the Z's, what you'll find is that they've got the desire to get the knowledge, the wisdom, and the experience. They just don't want the school of hard knocks. They want to go through the pain and suffering that older generations went to get it. Well, why? Because there's technology available now. There's more storage of knowledge and things like that. And so the older generations, I think, inadvertently started belittling and knocking the younger generations as being lazy or not caring. And I don't think it's that at all. I think that was a misassignment, quite frankly. I think because the younger generations aren't willing to get kicked around doesn't make them lazy. It makes them smarter. It makes them wanting to achieve more sooner without the bumps and bruises if they can accomplish it. And so the older generations need to kind of get over the fact that the younger generations don't want to get kicked around, and the younger generations need to open up to the fact that the older generations are a tremendous asset when it comes to knowledge, wisdom, and experience.
So how do you start building the bridges between those two?
Well, I think doing shows like this, being able to communicate the message. I'm coming out with a book that details all this on how to do it. But one of the things that I've said when I'm speaking to younger audiences is, okay, I don't hold the fact that you don't want to get the bumps and bruises. If I could have done it that way, I would have chosen not to get the bumps and bruises too. But I didn't have a choice. I got it the way I got it, right? So if you are taught to search for external hard drives of information, let's just reframe who boomers are. My name is no longer Scott. My name is external hard drive. So as a boomer, I want to find the energy, the feistiness, the desire that the younger generations have. If we can help the younger generations seek the knowledge, the wisdom, and experience that the older generations have, and now come together and bridge those gaps, we've got amazing solutions available to us when we come together, not when we're divided.
So how would you get the younger generations interested in bridging the gap and seeking out that knowledge that way that doesn't have to be Google? It could be your dad's or your grandpa, depending on the age, best friend. How do you think we can get them interested in seeking out that knowledge?
Well, I think the first thing that has to happen is the the older generations need to stop belittling the younger generations. Nobody likes being picked on or not being thought well of. And that's across all generations. Nobody likes that in either direction, right? So I think the first thing is to recognize it. The second thing is to act with respect, honor, and dignity to all, is respect them for their desires. I mean, when I'm talking to millennials, as an example, I had one say, so why are you so resistant to input from the older generations? And the answers that they come out with are, what? Like, I'm supposed to listen to a guy who's on his fifth marriage, is overweight, drinks too much, is unhealthy, and saying he lives the greatest life? Yeah, I want none of that. And if you just stop for a second and don't judge them for it and just listen to it, well, you wouldn't want that either, right? And so the fact is that if both sides would kind of just put their guard down for a second and say, hey, you know what? I've got something that could be of use to you. You've got something that could be useful to me. Teaming together, everybody achieves mastery. We can actually come together and do some good work. And so when I present this concept to older generations, in fact, I had a woman when we were doing some question and answer said, you know, Scott, my goodness, I'm going to call my granddaughter right now. I'm going to become her external hard drive. I'm going to team up with my granddaughter and suggest we go into business together. She's got all the energy in the world. She's got great ideas. She just needs a little guidance. I want her to feel that I am the safe space for that guidance. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is everybody's got to kind of get rid of the badge of what their generational badge. And they just got to say, hey, I want to make positive impact. I want to do it with respect, honor, and dignity. And the way we do that is to treat each other that way. And let's create a common goal and go for it.
So when you speak to younger generations, what messages do you think resonate most with them? What are you sharing that when you see their eyes light up or they perk up with their body language? What messages do you think are resonating with them?
I think when you acknowledge it's okay that you don't want to get your butt kicked. It's okay that you don't want to live these separate lives. What I've done, I've got 2 millennial kids, and the only thing I've ever encouraged them to be is to live their best life. And as an example, my son had and daughter too, but had a huge desire to contribute to the greater good at a much younger age than I did. Mm-hmm. And I applauded him for it from the beginning. You know, he wasn't striving for the corporate position and the big things, the things that I learned. But the only reason I learned them is my dad worked for the same company for 46 years. From 17 till 63 when he retired, same company. And so that was the model I saw. Well, I did that for about 12 and a half years, and corporate America changed. And I went, yeah, no, I'm out. But originally, that's what I saw. So I modeled that. Well, because of the entrepreneurialism, I believe that's where my son and my daughter are more entrepreneurial, because they saw something different out of their mother and I. And I think that that's what happens over time is my generation grew up and you worked 40 hours a week, you worked 40 years, and you kept 40% of what you got, and you were happy with it. And if you really do the study of that, that's not a great equation. No. And then somebody says, hey, you can do this a different way, so you become entrepreneurial. That's cool. But think of what's happened for Gen X and millennials, and Zs are the benefactors of it. The gig economy. All of a sudden, the rules changed. It wasn't, I need to be with a company over an extended period of time. It was, I might be with 5 companies, and I do it because I love it. I don't do it because I need it. And so again, I think a big part of this is, getting rid of the biases on both sides. The younger generations have biases that, they call boomers names, right?
Mhm.
Oh, you just don't get it. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like when your boss yells at you. Oh, really? I had a lot of years of that, right? And boomers go, well, you don't know what it's like to drive 2 hours to the office each way each day. And they're like, yeah, why would you do that? There,
Mhm.
you can even, why would you go to a studio to record a show like this? You can do it in your own home,
Mhm.
right? So knowledge has moved so fast, technology has moved so fast, all these things. And so the older generations, in my opinion, need to get off the, our my way or the highway stuff.
Mhm.
And the younger generations need to say, hey, you do have knowledge, wisdom, and experience that we could benefit from. How about we team up? And I truly believe when you put those together, you got an unstoppable team put together.
Well, same question as far as your messaging when you're talking to the older generation audiences. What gets their attention? What do you see them nodding their heads yes to? What messages are really landing with them about the cross generational gap?
Well, the biggest thing that I got when I was doing it, in fact, I did a video conference, and there were, probably 50 people in the video conference. And as I looked screen to screen, I was the youngest one there. And I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. I wonder how everybody's going to take it. But this is where, when we had the question and answers, this woman who, I don't know, she was 10, 15 years older than I was, said, thank you so much. I feel reborn. I feel vital again. I'm going to call my granddaughter and offer up creating a company with her, creating the working relationship with her. And what I realized at that point, the responses from that group were very much the same. The older generations all of a sudden felt useful again. It's not like they've been put out to pasture and go, well, you have no use. Your knowledge and wisdom is worthless. I don't care about your experience, old timer, go sit in your rocker. They were exactly the opposite. They were like, wow, I've got value. And that value could be used to serve the greater good. Okay, I'm going to go find somebody that wants to use my value. And so I think that's why this is so important. Is the fact is, there's more knowledge, there's more talent, there's more genius on this planet than there's ever been.
Mhm.
But when you divide it, it doesn't collaborate for the greater good. You get these little pockets of fiefdoms. Well, the fiefdoms aren't working so well. It's time to pull it back together. And I think that all starts with communicating with each other with respect, honor, and dignity.
So, what's an example of a starter conversation? If someone's listening or watching and they fall into the younger generations and they get your idea of the external hard drive concept, as far as an initial approach and shifting your way you talk to older generations, what advice would you have for them? What would the conversation look like?
If I was my generation, a boomer, talking to a younger person, I would say, what is it that truly excites you? What is what drives your passion? Is it a cause? Is it a desire? Do you like material things? Do you like to see people prospering? What is it that excites you? Find out their why. And if you're younger, it's the exact same. Is if you came back and say, you've lived for a number of years now. That's not an insult. It's a recognition that you have experience. What's the greatest thing you've ever experienced? And why? and trade off some of that learning in both directions. I mean, the reality is people love to hear about their favorite topic, them.
Yeah.
They want to hear themselves talk. And so if I say to you, you know, if you could improve one thing in your life as a millennial, what would it be? Well, I wish XYZ. That becomes the starter. Well, guess what? That same question goes to a boomer. If you could improve one thing in your life right now, what would it be? Well, gosh, I'd like to be looked at as valuable. I'd like to be looked at as a contributor. Well, how do you see yourself doing that? Well, I want to team up with whomever wants the knowledge, wisdom, and experience that I've had so that we could do some great things together. It's not about me, it's about us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you have those kinds of conversations and not be afraid of it, it's funny because when I told my millennial daughter I was writing the book, Endless Connections, Creating Authentic Relationships That Matter, her first comment was, who are you as a boomer to write a book on how to help millennials communicate? And I said, well, what I am is a student of the art and science of communication. And I understand people have treated you unfairly. And I want to solve that problem. I'm on your side.
Mm-hmm.
I believe we should come together. I'm not one of those boomers that think you're this, that, or the other thing. What I think you are is energetic, feisty, not afraid of stuff, ready to go like heck. You just sometimes don't know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can help you on where to go. I can help you get that path. So let's go there together. And as soon as I said that, she went, yeah, that's true. You know, so again, I live this. I've got 2 millennial kids. They're amazing. I want to grow up and be as good as my kids. But we're doing it differently. And that's where the divides have happened. And then the social nature that's happened with the pandemic and all the different stuff. It's created all sorts of things that shouldn't be there right now. And we need to stop shooting all over stuff. We need to put it together.
Well, using should in a good way, and not shooting all over the place. What is the opposite side of that coin? What should people be doing? If people are generations are doing things so differently, what should they be doing to help each other?
Well, I think the key is with the pandemic, there was this farce of social distancing that came out. And from the second it came out, I refused to social distance. Now, I immediately began physical distancing. If in fact the experts felt that 6 feet from each other was what we should be, okay, I did it. It's been disproved. It made no difference. But the point is that we are social beings. I physical distanced, but I upped my social game, meaning I talked to more people. And what I truly believe, when you're diametrically opposed, when you're 180 degrees away from something, it's very difficult to solve any challenges because one side is so set in their position and another side is so set in their position that no communication, no conversation happens, or none that's tremendously valuable. But if you're only this far apart, you can come together when you discuss things. I don't have to agree with you. I don't even have to like you, but I should respect you. You're a human being on this planet right along with me. I should respect you. I should honor you and lift you up for your positions. And when I respect and honor you and you do the same to me, dignity is created. The entire relationship is up-leveled. That's what we should be doing, is respecting, honoring, and dignifying people.
So how do you do that? How do you respect and honor someone? What are some examples?
Well, there's a variety of different ways of doing it. It's treating people with respect. It's being kind. It's doing things on social media. I did it this morning. A friend announced that he was going to be presenting at an event, and the comment I put was, all in the audience will be blessed by your genius. Complimenting each other. Be kind to each other. Lift each other up. Be nice to each other. Try to serve each other. One of the things I learned doing 3,000 live events in my career as a professional speaker is the promoter of the event was always number one. The audience at the event was always number two. At the very best, I was third. And if people would learn that kind of positioning, that the person you're talking to, like when you're having a conversation, one of the techniques that I share is tell the second story. And what I mean by that is that means if I'm going to tell the second story, you have to tell the first story. So I purposely want you to tell the first story, not so that I can react and top your story, but rather that I can listen to your story and then enhance the entire conversation with my story so that we can create relationship. It's about relating. Well, how do you relate? You find common ground, common experience, shared views. I mean, that's all part of it.
We're kind of dancing around an issue, mentorship, not an issue, but a great opportunity. As far as mentorship, what's your take on it? How do you think that mentoring relationships can be developed? And have you had those in your past across the generational gap?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a huge proponent of mentorship. Quite frankly, it's the only way that passing knowledge down has been proven to work through the ages. A mentor, a master took an apprentice under their wing and taught that journeyman the work. When we're talking trades, well, it's very similar in communication or anything else. I've written checks to, I believe, 19 mentors across my career. So if I had a desire to learn anything in particular, I would seek out the very best in that category. In speaking, that was John Childers. In success, that was Jack Canfield. In stock market, that was Mike Koval and Freddie Rick. There are names, right? And I said the same thing to every one of my mentors as I wrote that check. Give me everything you got, and my commitment to you is I won't keep it. And what I mean by that is that I will share the knowledge I gain from you with my students and my clients, and ultimately become an extension of you. So Jack Canfield, as an example, a wonderful man, a great friend, his mentor was W. Clement Stone.
Wow.
And so he would, as I was learning with him and through him and from him, he would reference W. Clement Stone. And well, that's what I do with Jack these days, right? I mention Jack. I learned this from Jack. E plus R equals O. Great equation. Not the events in our life. It's the events plus the responses that determine our outcomes. Well, that's a success principle from Jack. So I think the key to mentoring is to find somebody who's been there and done that, who has the knowledge and the wisdom and the desire to pass it along. And that's, again, I think sometimes it takes, and I'm not saying that you have to be a boomer of that or of that age to be a mentor, but I just think you've experienced a lot of stuff by that time. There are Gen Xers that are mentors as well. I'm not suggesting they're not, but I'm just saying there is value in experience. Experience is a fabulous teacher. It's just a very expensive teacher. And that's what the younger generations are looking at the boomers when they're saying, well, I got all this experience. Yeah, you got your butt kicked 28 times. Well, yeah, but that's how I got the experience. So you have a choice. Get your butt kicked 28 times and get it yourself. Very expensive. Or borrow mine. And that's where I think it's time to pull the generations back together, because there's more knowledge, more wisdom, more expertise, more experience on this planet than there's ever been.
So if someone's listening or watching and thinks mentorship sounds great, I know from conversations I've had with people that to some people it seems like a daunting task. How would you recommend people approach potential mentors?
Well, I think the easiest thing is, the other thing that I have found is, if you truly want to, a mentor will want to work with you. And what is want to? Desire. That burning desire in your belly that says, no matter what, I want to learn this material. I want to be a better person. I want to pass it along. You can learn the rest. But if you don't have the burning desire to learn, that's where the mentor says, not worth my time and effort, right? The other thing is that I would encourage, and specifically one of my mentors shared with me, we went out to dinner one day and he said, I got to ask you a question. He said, you've been tremendously successful speaking and you've had all these stages and done all this great stuff. But he said, I got to ask a question. And I said, what's that? He said, you're the only person out of thousands of speakers I've trained that has done 100% of what I suggested you do. I got to know why. And I said, I'll answer that, but you answer two questions for me first. He said, okay. I said, how many dollars worth of checks did I write you? He gave me a number and I said, yeah, that sounds about right. I said, how many of those checks did you cash? He said, every one of them. I said, you now know why I'm doing everything you taught me to do. Why would I pay you to learn how to do it the best way possible and then not do it? And he said, you're the only one who ever has. See, people, ego steps in and whatever. When I went to become a professional speaker, my dad was a Toastmaster, spoke at the national convention. I mean, he was a good speaker, but he wasn't a professional speaker. And so I respected what I saw, but when it came time to become a professional, I went to find the professional speaker trainer, the $1 million speaker trainer. And that's the guy I listened to. Now, I took what I knew and built on it, but that's the point, is people want to come in and, well, yeah, Mark, let me, I'm your podcast host and I'm your radio show host, mentor. And this is the way you should do it. And you go, yeah, well, I like points 1, 5, 6, and 8, but the other ones I'm doing my own way. It's like, why did you retain them? Mentors have a true desire, I have found, to pass along the very best information they possibly can to help their mentees become as successful as they possibly can, as quickly as they can. They've had the hard knocks. Why do you want to create your own? If they would have thought it would have been better to do it a different way, they would have taught you a different way. But ego tends to step in. Well, I'm going to put my spin on it. Why? They're giving you exactly what works.
So what if someone really curious about this, actually, what if someone's watching, listening, and okay, I get it, I'm on board with mentorship, but I don't have the money to pay a Jack Canfield to be my mentor. What advice would you have for them? How do you go about seeking it out if you can't write a check? What does that look like in the world of mentorship?
Well, the reality is you've got to have some kind of exchange of value. And I've had situations where I couldn't write a check, but I could work the back of the room for somebody, or I could volunteer at an event, or I could be in their environment to be of service. So, yeah, most times it takes writing a check of some sort. But again, I didn't start with that level of mentor. I started with a lower level of mentor. There are some really good people. The thing that I would suggest is novel concept. Have a conversation with them, and do you align? It's alignment before assignment. Do I align with that person? Do I align with their values? There are people that the only reason they mentor and coach, and I hate to say it, is for the money. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with money. But if you don't really care about the people, and I'm not saying that's the vast majority, but there are a few. And then there are a few that just say, I can see your talent. They want to invest in you. And if there's a possibility to work together, they'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. You know, for me, what I have personally found is anytime I expressed want to, and I wanted to exchange value for the knowledge and wisdom that I would learn from them, the dollars became secondary. They really wanted to make that heart-to-heart connection.
So on the other side of that, if people get approached to be a mentor, what advice do you have for would-be mentors to do it effectively to make an impact?
Well, I think the biggest thing is you also have to have want to, and I'll refer back to one of my mentors. He said, Scott, give them everything you got every time. 2 reasons. Number 1, they won't remember most of what you said. And number 2, even if they do, they'll goof it up. They'll try to put their spin on it and try to make it special. So he said, give everybody everything every time. And if they come back, those are the people you're supposed to work with. So from a mentor, I had a coaching call with one of my clients this morning, and we were talking about specific presentations that she's doing and how she wants to outreach. And we were crafting parts of her presentation and doing different things, working to help her achieve her goals. Mm-hmm. If you're a mentor, none of it's about me. It's all about them. And it's about them achieving their greatness better, faster, sooner, because they're borrowing my experience. That's why you have a mentor in the first place.
So we have covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time comparative to how long the conversation could be. As far as sharing your ideas and bridging the generational gap, a lot of great stuff was here, whether you're reinforcing a point that you made or something you haven't touched on yet. If you're to say to do this and start to bridge that gap, or if you want to do it effectively, at least do this one thing, at least this one thing. What would you tell people the one thing to do above all would be to cross a generational gap?
Say hi to somebody. Simply start a conversation. A smile goes a long way. A nice word goes a ton. Look at your social media posts, your friends' posts differently. How could you support them in what they're doing? Those are all really easy, non-cost things to do. I truly believe there need to be more conversations in the world. Technology is wonderful, but what's happened is, people are looking down, they're looking at their phone, they're not looking at each other. We've lost the art of just having a simple conversation. And what's the worst thing that can happen? I say, hey, Mark, how you doing? And you don't say a word to me. Well, let's see what happened. I said, hey, Mark, how you doing? I smiled. It felt good. I felt like I put something good out in the world. You totally ignored me. Okay. We weren't talking prior. We're still not talking. It didn't get worse. Right? I felt better. I did what I could do. Okay, it didn't turn out the way I thought it might. Okay, so I learned another lesson, right? So maybe I approach it differently next time. The point is, I believe we need to have more conversations because people aren't talking to each other, or they're talking junk. Try to find out what people are interested in, why they're interested in it. They love their dogs. Why do they love their dogs? What kind of dog do they have? Just be interested in somebody. Stop trying to be interesting.
Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it, Scott. And if people want to find you, where's the best place or places to go online?
Well, I'm easy to find, Scott at scottschilling.com. Website is scottschilling.com. And I've got a new book coming out that really surrounds all this, and it's called Endless Connections, Creating Authentic Relationships That Matter. And you can get that at endlessconnectionsbook.com. And I really don't think it's a book. I think it's a movement. I think it's going to work to cross generations, to get people working together, and hopefully bring some positive impact to the planet.
That sounds like an awesome mission. Thank you again, Scott. I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm honored.
And scene. Thank you for tuning into the Idea Climbing radio show today. I really appreciate it. I hope you got something great out of it that you can take into your own life and use to be better in your own life. If you want more great shows like this, go to 216thenet.com. You want to see more of my interviews, radio show, and podcast? Go to markjcartertv.com. Again, that's markjcartertv.com and 216thenet.com. Hope to see you on one of those platforms or maybe even both.